So I'm semi-retired at the age of 30. In this video, I'm going to explain how I got here, what it means for me to be semi-retired, and some of the potential problems I could face by being semi-retired so early on. So I'm actually not sure if I'm going to delete this video later on. I thought it could actually help a few people out there, but I don't know exactly how useful it's going to be. So I'm going to break this video down into a few sections. So the first is how I got here. So like I said, I am currently 30 years old. In my 20s, which obviously hasn't been too long ago, I spent my time trying to gain all the necessary skills so that, I could get a good conventional job that will pay me X amount and I'll be happy with the amount I get per month. Now, this is the conventional way of doing things, and up until just a few years ago, I didn't really think there was anything wrong with that, apart from the fact that, one thing, I hated working and I absolutely hate being told what to do. But nevertheless, life is what it is. You can't always have everything that you wanted. And I thought if I got a good job that pays well, I'll be able to do whatever I want. It wasn't until I read books on early retirement that I realized that, you can actually take more control over your destiny and you can retire well before your 60s or 50s or whatever. You can early retire if you make the right decisions. Obviously, up until the age of 27, I didn't really think of these things too much about retirement or anything like that. I just thought I had to have a good job. So anyway, I was doing my PhD at the age of 27, saving up as much as I could, working as many jobs as I can. And doing a PhD obviously puts me ahead of a lot of other people because of course I've got my undergraduate degree, my master's degree, and doing a PhD. I never actually thought I would do a PhD, but for me, getting into an actual job was something that I never wanted to do, so I kept delaying it. After getting my first degree, I said I'm not going to get a job because maybe I need a master's, and after my master's I thought, let's do a PhD. I don't want to actually work. However, that turned out to be a really good decision because, at the end of the day, having a PhD is never going to be a bad thing, and I'll come back to that in a bit. But anyway, at the age of 28, I got my PhD from a very good university, University College London, and that was in biomaterials and biomedical engineering. So already I put myself ahead of the normal pack. If I was going to apply for a job, I have a PhD with lots of relevant skills, publishing over 25 times in peer-reviewed scientific articles. That is a lot for someone aged 30, let alone 30. A lot of professors have less publications than that. Anyway, whilst I was doing my PhD, I realized the power of investing, and I put everything I had disposable into investing, started investing at the age of 27. So looking back, quite late, investing that late at 27, but I started anyway. Currently, I have an investment portfolio of over £120,000 shared across many different platforms. Of course, Trading 212 being the main platform that I talk about, but actually I have a considerable amount in other platforms too. Remember, if you do want to sign up to Trading 212 and receive a free share worth up to £100, you can always use the link in the description. Alternatively, you can go into the promo code section of the app and use my code JUBAIR and you should receive a free share. But anyway, what I did during my PhD is to save, put it into investments, watch that grow really well over those years as we had, the crashes and so on and so forth. And also, most importantly, I saved for an emergency fund of a whole year. Whilst I was doing my PhD, I actually started, or should I say continued, my YouTube journey. I actually started posting YouTube videos in 2016, believe it or not. That didn't get me anywhere, but I've always wanted to do YouTube. I always wanted to produce content. Ever since I was a child, I always loved making videos. We'll come back to that again because it's very important in my journey. Remember, this is my personal journey. I'm just sharing with you how I became semi-retired at the age of 30. But anyway, during my PhD, I started a YouTube channel, currently on like 2,000 subscribers, talking about my journey and my PhD. And, gaining the relevant skills of it, being able to speak to the camera, video editing, loads of different skills that will help me in my next journey of opening this channel right now called Jubair's Finance, then later renamed to Dr. Jubair's Finance. Now, this is what would change everything for me. Starting it as a side hustle initially, I was making like £200-300 from the ad revenue on YouTube. Nothing else from it. I was really not making anything much more than that. With Trading 212, yes, I talked about it, but I would probably get like 1 or 2 signups a month, and that was capped at 5 per 2 months. So I wasn't really making money there. I was talking about my experience with investing, with money, and ultimately behind the scenes, I just wanted to retire as soon as possible. So fast forward to today, I can honestly say that I currently right now am semi-retired, and I'll explain to you what that actually means for me. But before that, let's run through the numbers on how I actually managed to become semi-retired. So as I've said, I have a portfolio currently of over £120,000 shared between my different accounts, mostly on Trading 212 and InvestEngine. Probably have a few other accounts that I don't even count, like eToro, Robinhood, Free Trade and stuff like that. So let's use our good old friend, the compound interest calculator, to see a projection of what my current investments could look like when I'm actually 60 and maybe no longer able to work. So let's start off with an initial investment of £120,000. Let's say we'll get 8% in the stock market per year. I don't think that's actually too unrealistic, seeing as though I've managed to get more than that per year since I've invested. Let's change this to 30 years because in 30 years I will be 60. So in terms of monthly deposits, I'm not going to add anything just to see how it would look like with no further deposits. And let's go to calculate to see what would happen. So you can see as a projection of 30 years, let's say I'm semi-retired now and I don't contribute anything to my investments, I could be looking at a portfolio value of about £1.3 million. Now, of course, I will invest everything into an ISA, which means everything here will be tax-free. Now, if I use the 4% rule, that's £52,000 per year tax-free divided by 12. That's a spending of over £4,000 per month after completely stopping working, based on a projection of getting 8% per year in the stock market, which in the long term, I think it is possible to achieve. So that still doesn't explain how I've managed to semi-retire by the age of 30. So remember I was talking about the channel that I created, Dr. Jubair's Finance. Well, currently that brings me an income of around £5,000 per month, which I know is very difficult to believe. A channel under 10,000 subscribers could be bringing in so much. But currently getting £2,000 per month from the channel is not too difficult of a scenario. The other thing that I have done actually in order to become semi-retired is, of course, in addition to actually quitting my job, is to move to a different part of the UK where the rent is cheaper, the cost of living is cheaper, and my basic costs are under £1,200 per month. This means that my new income target after tax is £2,500, which I think I could achieve online. Now, with this £2,500 target per month, this includes every cost that I have, which will be £1,500, and then that brings me in another £1,000 per month that I can keep investing into the stock market. Now, if we go back to our best friend, the compound interest calculator, and input these new details. So I'm starting with the same initial investment of £120,000, 8% interest rate, investing for 30 years, and now my deposits every single month will be £1,000, and let's calculate what that is now. So in 30 years, I could be projected to have an investment portfolio of £2.8 million by investing £1,000 per month based on 8% per year in the stock market. Now, with the 4% rule, that's £112,000 per year tax-free, and I could spend over £9,000 in today's money per month without worrying about having to work, which again sounds absolutely crazy, but the power of investing and compounding returns can really work in your favor, especially if you start investing sooner. Now, with those numbers out of the way, what does semi-retirement actually mean for me? Now, I'm using the word semi-retirement because I'm technically, yes, retired. However, I still do have to work to make that income. My £2,500 target per month after tax does have to be worked for. However, the reason why it's semi-retirement is because, bringing back to when I said I've started YouTube in 2016, is because I absolutely love making YouTube videos. In fact, if I was completely retired now, if someone gave me £10 million or £20 million or whatever, guess what I would continue to do? I would continue making YouTube videos. As cringe as it sounds, it is actually what makes me satisfied for some reason. I don't know why, but it is. So therefore, I can confidently say that I am currently, as far as my eyes can see, semi-retired. Now, semi-retirement for me, the main thing is that I don't have to do anything that I do not want to do. So in employment, sometimes you have to deal with people you don't want to. Sometimes, there's meetings. I don't have to go to any meetings. I don't have to meet with anyone that I don't want to. I don't have to work with companies I don't want to. If I feel undervalued with a certain company, I can stop working with them. There is no necessity for me to do anything that I personally do not want to do. For me, that's powerful. For me, that's everything that I've ever wanted. The other thing about semi-retirement for me is that I can wake up whenever I want to. Now, the hardest part of a normal life for me was always waking up early. I absolutely hate alarm clocks and waking up early and being told when I should sleep. For me, I do pretty much anything there is in life to avoid having to wake up early. 9 a.m. starts for me are way too early. I can't deal with it. That's not something I want to do. And for me, semi-retirement means I can wake up whenever I want to. Now, if I wanted to wake up at 6 a.m., I could do that, but there is no obligation for me. And therefore, that unlocks a new level of freedom. And you'd be amazed how much of a difference mental freedom makes. At the end of the day, humans don't have complete freedom. We're still limited by what we can do on Earth, but freedom mentally makes so much difference. The other thing for me, semi-retirement, is not having a boss. I have no one to report to, no companies that I work with that I have to report to, which is absolute freedom once again. Personally, there are no deadlines for me. There's no one I have to report to, no one that relies on me. And the way that I do my content creation is I do everything myself, the thumbnails, the editing, the videoing, the scheduling. I don't have to hire anyone, which I know could be a waste of my time. I could leverage my time by hiring, but that's not something I want to do or ever do. I don't want to have people to rely on. I don't have any expenses currently. All the money that I earn from this content creation business, which is not really a business, goes back to me. And therefore, I know that if I hit hard times, I'm the one who can make cutbacks. No one else has to suffer for that. The other great thing about being semi-retired is, like today, I wake up and I don't feel like doing anything. I don't have to do anything. With normal employment, you have to go in even if you're not feeling the best. You have to go in because there is an expectation that you have to go in. You're being scheduled in, etc., etc. Something that I'm really happy about being semi-retired. But arguably the most important thing about semi-retired is that I can spend my time on things that bring value to me personally. And I think that is the most important point, because retirement is a personal thing. You can retire at whatever age, but all retirement is always about compromise, and I will talk about that later on. But for me, the most important thing is that I can spend time with my family, my wife and my kid. I can spend as much time as I want now, which is actually priceless. I could be making maybe 10x more if I made a company, a business, and this and that. But you know what? I will never get back the time in my 20s or my 30s. So you do have to weigh out that option too. When I was in employment, the worst thing about it was that I couldn't travel whenever I wanted to. You have to request holidays, and what is the point of traveling when you have to book it 6 months in advance? It kind of defeats the whole purpose of being spontaneous. So that's one great thing that you can do when you are semi-retired, or even if you're self-employed really. And another big point about semi-retired, like I said before, is I've always wanted to do YouTube, and now that it pays, it doesn't feel like work. I would definitely do it anyway, so why not just call it semi-retirement? And at the end of the day, semi-retirement is more a state of mind. You could be in your 80s, you could be retired, but if that's not bringing you satisfaction and it's not aligning with the values that you want from life, then is it really retirement? Now, of course, it sounds a bit crazy to think someone is semi-retired at the age of 30, but I do have to say that all retirements come with sacrifice. Even a billionaire can't retire with everything that they wanted to, because it's impossible. You can't get everything that you want. Now, here are some sacrifices, or I would say amendments to my life that I made so that I could be semi-retired. First of all is the fact that I, as an individual, I am not completely into material possessions. So things like designer clothes, looking good for other people, having the best car, having the best interior, things like that don't bother me, and therefore I don't really care about them. I care more about being able to spend time with my family or the people that I love. So as a compromise, I've decided that I will never own property. For me, renting is enough. So the compromise here is that I will always need cash flow, something that of course I am working on currently, and my investment portfolio will help me have that cash flow so I can always afford to rent. Renting for me is also a very big bonus because it means I can move around whenever I want and have the opportunity to leave the country, move countries back and forth whenever I want to. Currently also, one of the compromises that I've made is that I don't own a car because I do believe it is an unnecessary expense, road tax, MOT, petrol, all the sorts. So that does bring down my cost of living considerably. Another sacrifice that I'm more than willing to make is just spending in general. My spending is pretty low, and I don't feel like that impacts the quality of my life at all because I am getting everything satisfied that I have value with. For example, spending time with my family. And actually most of my money goes on eating well. I eat really good food every single day. My wife is an amazing cook. As you can see from some of these pictures, I just eat good and I spend a lot of money on eating good, both at the home and also outside of the home. So a lot of retirement is actually figuring out, what you want from life. A lot of people don't have that figured out even when they're in their 80s. So if you do want to retire early, you do have to figure out where the money is going to come from, what you're going to do whilst you're retired or semi-retired, and what brings you value in life. And I could almost guarantee for most of you, it isn't going to be material possessions because, things are shiny, things are nice, but once you have them, they're not as great as you would have thought in the beginning. A big part of my realization about retirement came from my fortunate position of being able to go to a really good university, meeting a lot of people with a lot of money, like we're talking about, not tens of millions, we're talking about a lot more than that, and realizing that the difference between you and them is a lot less than what you initially thought because they seemingly have everything, yet they don't have what they want. So even rich people don't have what they actually want. Money is not going to bring you everything. Money brings you a lot. Struggling is never a good place to be, but it doesn't bring you everything. You have to be the person that brings what you value to your life, if that makes sense, and as cringy as that sounds. Anyway, there are still a lot of problems with being semi-retired at any age, let alone 30. So here are some of the problems. The first is income diversification. So I'm assuming that I am semi-retired based on the money that I make from content creation, which is quite dangerous because that money could dry up any second. One thing I've done to mitigate this is to have a whole year of emergency fund or living costs. So even if I earn nothing, I still will be able to, keep myself going for a year. And even if I'm really desperate, I can always take out from my investment portfolio, something I don't want to do, but I always can. So I do have a big emergency blanket like that. Something I prepared for myself, gaining those skills, saving money, investing. That's something I've done in the background for many years. That has led me the opportunity to be able to semi-retire right now. Another thing with income diversification is, of course, I have my PhD. I have very good contacts all over the world when I was a PhD student, when I was working in academia, whom whenever the time comes and I need a job or a favor or anything, I could always contact. So having contacts is very important. Like I said before, I published over 25 papers. I'm actually a published book author too. So I have, things in the background that I could always fall back onto. Having a PhD at the end of the day is not going to be bad. It puts me ahead of so many others. And also I have the title doctor. Another potential problem is, of course, my problem with the cash flow. If I can't get the cash in, then can I really retire for as long as I think I can? One thing to note is retirement is not as permanent as you might think it is. You know how Tyson Fury always seems to retire and then come out of retirement? Retirement is a thing that you can, open the curtains to and close to once you've actually initiated it. So I could at any point choose to become unsemi-retired or unretired. So it's not a permanent thing. It's not a permanent blanket. So don't think of it like that. Another big problem is that costs can be way higher than I anticipate. And that's something that I think about all the time. So it really is a dynamic process. I don't just think I'm retired and I don't have to do anything. I do have to keep making sure I increase my income, but at least my window is set very low at £2,500 per month, which includes £1,000 for investments. I personally believe that making money online will always be a thing. Wherever people are, there's always ways to make money. I didn't have this confidence in my early 20s or even late 20s, but now I have the full confidence being online for so long now that there's always money to be made online. But like I said, big costs in the future, for example, children's weddings, unforeseen financial disasters. Luckily, I'm not owning property, so I don't have to replace someone's roof. Fun fact, the place I'm staying at recently, like literally the scaffolding is still up, is having their roof replaced, and that is a very, very costly thing. That's also another reason why I don't want to own property myself. And I personally believe that most landlords are unethical, and I don't want to, I'm not knocking anyone for being a landlord, but personally I think, being a landlord, first priority is profit, and you're basically in charge of people's well-being and lives. That's not something I personally want to be responsible for. So big costs, if big costs arise, how would I pay for them? Again, I could dip into my investments, but that's not something I want. But the way that I would mitigate that is to earn a lot more than £2,500 per month and have masses of savings that I can dip into for big costs. So one of the other main problems of semi-retirement is what happens when I get bored? What happens when I think, at 30 I'm very young? What happens when I think that my life isn't really aligning with my values? What do I do then? The easy thing there would be to just come out of retirement and continue in the career path or another career path. For example, I've always actually wanted to become a professor, to lecture all around the world. Something that is not too far away from me because, again, I have a lot of publications. I get invited on a daily basis to countries all around the world to give talks and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe if, I was getting bored with my life, I could start doing that. I would have the money to do that and, continue down academia, get my professorship, if that even is a word, and then become a very well-known professor or whatever. What I'm trying to say is that hard work in your 20s, you can pave your way into having a much better future in your 30s. It just takes time. With investing, everything takes time. In my 20s, if I look back, I had nothing to show for myself in my early 20s, absolutely nothing. Had probably less than 10 grand. That was my net worth. And currently, things are looking a lot better because I put all that effort in my 20s. And that's essentially why I'm making this video. I don't know how useful it will be, and I don't know if I'm going to delete it, but I really do hope it helps someone. And make sure to check out some of my other videos, and I'll see you in the next video.